Hello, everybody. Welcome to your very favorite Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I am your co-host, Mike Gall, and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we are going to be looking at Spider-Man comics from July of 1984.
That's right, and unfortunately, G.I. Jolie could not be with us this week, but Adam Pelche can be with us. Hi, Adam. How you doing?
Hey, Mike. I'm relieved. I thought you were going to say, unfortunately, Adam Pelche is with us.
Maybe next time. So we're celebrating because it's now the Alien Black costume saga. We're 2 months in now, 3 months in. So we thought we'd have you back on again. Adam, what do you know about Spidey's alien costume?
Pretty much everything. Like when I was 10 or 11, I was obsessed with the whole symbiote storyline. It was kind of my introduction to Spider-Man. So there's a lot of nostalgic rose-tinted glasses for this, which may have been a little bit shattered, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay, so and just for the record, we always talk about the design. Are you a fan of the black costume design?
Oh, I love the costume. It's minimalist, streamlined, iconic. I think it's great. Compared to the red and blue, though, you can't beat the classic.
Right. I'll agree with you there, but I would say, I think I can say for the record, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but of all the superheroes in history, if you're going to talk about a non-main costume, Spidey's got to have the best one. Like, I can't think of another superhero with kind of like a second costume that ever compared to this, except maybe Wolverine's brown and orange costume.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is something you guys put a lot of thought to, if you have a lot of sleepless nights because of this, but do you guys have... Are there any other costumes you can think of that beat the original? Josh, can you think of any?
I don't think so. No.
Right.
For Spidey? No.
Or anyone. No,
not.
like, if you think about, like Superman, anyone. Are there any superheroes you can think of that have, like, maybe a secondary costume that's as popular as this one? I don't think so.
Does when Superman has a mullet count?
See, yeah, that counts, and that's definitely one that's not as good as this one, right?
Yeah,
No.
I feel like maybe the only other one, like you said, would be Wolverine and possibly Batman, because Batman has a lot of, like, famous costumes. Like, he's famous for having, like, all black with, like, the, with
right.
either yellow or blue, or having, like, the colorful blue costume.
That's a good point.
So maybe, but I feel like... with like the Dark Knight and how Batman has been kind of like updated for today's audience, he's just more well known for having an all black costume, where Spidey, I think, has the most famous alternate costume.
Right. All right, so we are, speaking of awesome costumes, we're actually, once again, we have the benefit of reading a comic drawn by the co-designer of the black costume, Rick Leonardi, just like last month. Mm-hmm. So we got a Rick Leonardi cover here. Adam, are you familiar with Rick Leonardi's art at all?
Only through the black costume storyline, so I have a little bit of familiarity from it. But like I said, that's going back when I was 11, 12, something like that.
All right. So for starters here, it's actually been a long time since I read this issue. Did you guys have any guess of who the mysterious villain was on the cover here before we read the story?
I thought I didn't even also realize that it was a villain at first. Like,
okay,
he just kind of says like back off. So I thought maybe there was like some conflict between heroes, because it kind of like looks like Iceman a little bit on the cover.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, maybe like Iceman, has a guest appearance, and they have, like, in every issue with two heroes meeting for the first time, they're gonna like tussle and be enemies before they team up and become friends. So I'm thinking like maybe that's what's happening here. But I didn't realize that it was like a character that they're trying to hide from us.
Okay, what about you, Adam?
No, I'm in the same boat as Josh. I just thought it was supposed to be Iceman, or maybe it was going to be Silver Surfer. I don't know. Why does Silver Surfer need a battle van? Take it into space. I don't know why.
No, it's funny because even though I'd read this, it's been so many years, I actually thought it was the Punisher because it says, hey, the battle van is mine. I'm thinking, well, I know the Punisher has a battle van. So I thought maybe the Punisher was back. I don't know. Completely. But yeah, so anyway, surprised. It's actually the Jack-o'-lantern, which, Adam, do you recall what happens with the Jack-o'-lantern later on in Spidey history?
Oh, vaguely. I think he dies at one point, but I think like every Spider-Man villain died at one point.
Doesn't the Punisher get him?
Actually, no. What happens is
Speaking of-
Jack-o'-lantern becomes Hobgoblin too.
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
Once Roderick Kingsley dies, Jack-o'-lantern is the Hobgoblin. So.
Okay. I
Yeah.
thought for some reason Punisher kills him in Civil War.
Oh, you know what? Okay. That might be... It could have been after Roger Stern came back and fixed the story. I don't know what happened, but
Right.
either Jason McIndale went back to being Jack-o'-lantern, or maybe that was a different Jack-o'-lantern. That might have been Jack-o'-lantern
Possibly.
too. I don't know.
How
But anyway,
many jack-o'-lanterns are there? This is what I'm wondering about.
I know how many hobgoblins, how many green
Yeah.
goblins, right? But anyway,
I really like Jack-o'-lantern. I think it's such a fun, goofy villain, and like
right.
he's riding around on this like weird like round UFO.
Right.
It kind of looks like those like I don't know if you guys ever had them as a kid, but it's like a round disc with like two balls on either side.
Oh, you
and
mean
you're
a
supposed to,
pogo
like,
ball?
The pogo ball.
Yeah, of course.
It's totally just a pogo ball.
That is
Right.
exactly what I thought about when I first saw it in
Yeah.
this issue.
And the thing is,
Yeah.
what's it called? Steve McNiven, who's a great artist, who drew Civil War, actually complained about having to draw. There was this one ending splash page where it's kind of like the big reveal of all the supervillains standing there. And one of them was Venom, I think, and one of them was someone else. And he was kind of laughing at Jack-o'-lantern. He's like, yeah, I had to draw this guy Jack-o'-lantern with a pumpkin head that's on fire. And I'm like, yeah? What's wrong with that? I mean, all these other guys are equally as ridiculous. Jack-o'-lantern
Yeah, for
actually
sure.
looks pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, Spider-Man in this book, not this issue, but in this series, has fought a character that was just like shot hula hoops from his body.
Right, the ringer.
Jack-o'-lantern's not ridiculous in the slightest when you
Exactly.
compare it to some of the others. So
And you know what else? If you think of like every superhero having kind of like a theme to their villains, you think of, Superman's villains are usually a little bit science fiction-y. Maybe there's an alien or a computer or something in there. Batman villains are usually closer to like Dick Tracy or like Alice in Wonderland type characters. And I always think of I always think of Spider-Man characters as being sort of like a Halloween theme. Like you think about the Green Goblin, right? You think about the Hobgoblin, Dr. Octopus. Well, maybe not him, but I don't know. A lot of his villains sort of have this, like this monster look to them.
right,
But
I think.
go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, like, for me, what I always thought about for Spider-Man's villains were, like, they're always connected to him. They always have something to do with his personal life. Like, they're always tied in. Like, Kirk Connors is his professor.
Yes.
Green Goblin is, like, one of his best friend's fathers. Like,
100%.
it's kind of like they always end up being tied in with him, and I think that adds to the story a lot, and it really kind of defines who Spider-Man is, because he can never catch a break. Just unlike any other superhero, like his personal life and his superhero life is always a mess, and they always kind of like cross lines, and everything goes to shit for him. So I that's always what comes to mind when I think of his like group of villains.
Right, right. Okay, so let's jump into the story. Amazing Spider-Man 254. Okay, so basically we're catching up with where we left off last month or last week. Basically, the Hobgoblin's van is in the Hudson River. It's being fished out. And then we cut over to this. It's funny because, again, even though I've read this story, I forgot. But we cut over to this shot of a guy in shadows who's communicating with some guys, who are kind of undercover, helping recover this van. And we've got a shot of the pumpkin in the foreground. And so I thought, oh, is this Tom DeFalco's sneaky way of saying this is the Hobgoblin? Like, obviously it's the Hobgoblin, so why bother trying to cover it up?
Right.
But no, I was wrong. It's not the Hobgoblin. But anyway, and then, of course, Spider-Man or Peter Parker's still having issues with Aunt May. Aunt May is snubbing him because she found out that Peter Parker dropped out of grad school, right? so she's all pissed off. But meanwhile, there's all these guys working undercover to help Jack-o'-lantern get this van. And so they're kind of like, distracting people on the street and kind of working to steal this battle van out from under their noses, which they do manage to do. Meanwhile, Peter Parker is, doing his Peter Parker stuff back at the Daily Bugle. He ends up tracking down this van, realizing what's going on. And then, of course, he ends up confronting, surprise, it's Jack-o'-lantern. Like we said earlier, it's not Green Goblin, it's Jack-o'-lantern. So he has one of his typical fights with Jack-o'-lantern, fisticuffs all around the city. A pretty decent fight. Not as good as it would have been if it was Roger Stern and John Romita Jr., but still solid, right? We get some little in-jokes, little Marvel in-jokes with some G.I. Joe figures. Like, they end up kind of, the fight spills into a shopping mall, right? I think.
Right, yeah, they're in like a big toy store.
Right. So they end up knocking over some G.I. Joe toys. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, they're not even G.I. Joe. They're like Captain America and Iron Man action figures.
Well, no, it says G.I. Joe, though. It says G.I. Joe, Real
yeah,
American Hero.
yeah, sorry, you're right. Earlier
Yeah.
it does say G.I. Joe.
And yeah. Oh, no, go ahead.
But yeah, they do end up like knocking over some of like the Marvel hero action figures as well.
Right.
Like a page or two later.
Right, okay, yep. And meanwhile, there's a subplot where Nathan Lubinsky, who's Aunt May's new sort of fiance or whatever he is, boyfriend, he has arranged to try and patch up the differences between Aunt May and Peter Parker by secretly arranging a dinner, with the three of them so that they can all get together and chat. And Peter Parker promises he's going to be there, but because he runs into the Jack-o'-lantern, right? And he ends up taking too much time fighting him. So by the time he gets to the restaurant, Aunt May's already gone. Nathan Lubinsky's like, so you finally got here, did you? Wow, you're too late. Your aunt left over an hour ago. In tears, I stayed behind to give you a piece of my mind. So he's kind of like, chewing out Peter Parker, and then he's kind of he doesn't storm off because he's in a wheelchair, but he wheels off. And then we get a classic recreation of like a Steve Ditko type idea where Steve Ditko would draw like an image of Spider-Man either separating Peter from a girl or hovering over in the background. But in this case, it's the black costume Spider-Man hovering in the background, right? As we see that Spider-Man has once again interfered in Peter Parker's personal life. And then that's it. The end for now. Awesome.
Yeah,
so Adam Oh yeah. Oh, so go ahead. You can.
I was just gonna say this
Josh.
was a great ending. That's really all I had to say. I just wanted to kind of bounce off.
Yes.
That story. It's really really strong ending.
And like we said before, Tom DeFalco is definitely, recreating as much as he can the vibe of the Stan Lee era of Spider-Man. And some might say he pushes a little bit too close or gets a little bit too close, but I'm still enjoying it. So Adam, what is your impression of this story?
I did not like it at all.
Okay.
Oh.
And it only gets worse from here. Go ahead, Adam.
This felt like one of those one and done issues where nothing's really accomplished. Even the little character bit with Peter and Nathan, for me, nothing was accomplished with that. There was this idea that Spider-Man is again getting in the way of Peter Parker's life, but it wasn't Peter being selfish for being Spider-Man or neglecting duties. He was trying to stop a supervillain from taking a van away. I mean, he had priorities here. I don't know. I just didn't seem like there was that good of character work with him. And I'm going to digress a little bit and disagree with you guys. I'm actually not a fan of Jack-o'-lantern.
Okay.
And my reasoning is, if you want Green Goblin as your villain, just have someone wear the Green Goblin suit. You could have an interesting character design with a guy with a jack-o'-lantern head that's flaming, that's cool, but do something unique. He's a certified Green Goblin / Hobgoblin clone. There's just nothing distinctive about his character, I find. And there's no tension. I never once felt that Peter Parker was in danger in this entire issue.
I will give you that. I think one problem a lot of these writers have, especially in this era, is for some reason they try to make Spider-Man so powerful and able to easily defeat all these villains. And you're right, it just completely gets rid of the tension. The whole idea should always be that the villain is more powerful than the hero, and then the hero has to use his wits, right, to get out of or to defeat the villain, like do something unique every time, not just be able to bat him off with one punch and kind of laugh at him as he's doing it, right?
Exactly. I have one other criticism I just want to bring up, and I'm sure it's resolved in some future issue or some tie-in, but why does the jack-o'-lantern need a van? I mean, you have the technology to make a flaming pumpkin head, and you have a flying disc. You have lasers that come out of your fingers, and you need a van with a gun on it. I don't understand the motivation for that.
I always saw Jack-o'-lantern as like a Hobgoblin or Green Goblin copycat, and that was that van, I assume, used to belong to the Green Goblin because Hobgoblin had been using it previously. So I think that's why he wanted to get his hands on it. It wasn't completely clear, but my mind must have just kind of like made that connection on its own. But you're right. I think that his motivations are pretty weak in this issue. I do think that the point of him being able to defeat Jack-o'-lantern so easily is to show that the suit is making him stronger and more powerful. Because they even make note of that early on, how easy it is for him to defeat him, and then how Jack-o'-lantern even says, like, oh my god, the last time I fought him, he wasn't this strong or fast. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure if they're building up to that, reveal of the symbiote being both like a positive and a negative for Peter, and ultimately being like too powerful and him getting rid of it. But yeah.
Here's the thing. I definitely analyze, superhero comics, but I do think that that's one of those things I can just forgive. I don't really think about it I don't care that much. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe that's on me. I don't know. But let's talk about the art for a second here. I love the art in this issue, even though I don't think the inks were necessarily totally suited to Rick Leonardi's style. But Adam, what is your impression of the art, of the pencils at least, in this issue?
There are some points where they looked really good. There's a real sense of dynamics going on, but then there are points where it feels almost too exaggerated. Exaggerated almost to the point where it gets a little bit sloppy. And I'm looking at digital page 20 as an example of this.
Okay, one second here. Let's see.
Right in the middle of the fight scene, there's this sequence, where Peter punches the jack-o'-lantern. His head is in an angle where it should not be.
Oh, Jack-o'-lantern's head is almost like backwards.
And then you go to the final panel on the bottom right, and Peter, I know Spider-Man is supposed to go in some very athletic-looking, unusual positions, but there is just something almost contortionist-like about the way Peter is just casually sitting against the wall in that panel, where it's nitpicky, but there's elements like that just throw me off about the art every once in a while. And my usual umbrage with just art of this style from this era is the lack of background detail for the most part.
I didn't really notice that. I mean, it doesn't really bother me. I mean, I do definitely think the inker is not great, so it is possible that the inker is not doing as good a job as another inker might have done.
Right.
But
I also think that like the digital redraw and the restoration doesn't do it any favors either.
Oh no!
Because the version that the version that we're reading, it's like that updated 2000 and whatever version of the comic that Marvel kind of like redrew and recolored.
Well, no, they don't redraw. They might touch up
they would trace.
comic.
I'm assuming that they would,
No, there'd be at this point there would be no redrawing because they have all the original negatives of everything and all the original art.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, they would only have that for like 60s comics where they were like throwing original art out and like using it to write phone numbers and putting their coffee on. But by this point they would have everything. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I just think that I don't know, like even if you look at like I'm trying to find like for example, once you get to Spidey in costume, around like 13, 14, 15. I don't know. Like some of these images, again, look kind of like, you know, even with the parts where you were talking about, Adam, like they do look kind of sketchy and like a little bit rushed. But if you look at the underlying anatomy, I think it's clear that Rick Leonardi, even though it's distorted, I still think he knows exactly what he's doing. And if there's any weaknesses, I think it's just because the inker, who's, you know, technically all we're seeing is what the inker is inking. So I think he's almost ruining the art a little bit by not really knowing anatomy himself, right?
I could see that. And, I will say, at least sequentially, the panels do flow really well. That's something I don't want to take away from Leonardi.
Right.
I want to say that the art is very serviceable, and there are moments where I think it's exceptional and has a real great dynamic to it. Just overall, it's not my favorite artistic style. This isn't my favorite Spider-Man artist.
Right.
Although there are little details like on digital page 17 where Hobgoblin is bouncing, or I'm saying Hobgoblin, I'm jumping ahead, where Jack-o'-lantern's bumping off of walls and there's an old guy in a wife beater kind of shaking his fist at him. I love those little details. Those are great.
Right. So I'm going to say this was definitely my favorite issue of the week.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, again, not as good as Roger Stern and John Romita Jr., but still fun. And not classic, but I would recommend it. Josh, would you recommend this issue?
Yeah, I would recommend it. It's pretty fun, and I think I personally like this stuff with Peter and his personal life and Aunt May being upset, and I really like the ending, particularly the last panel of the issue. So for me, it would be a recommend.
Adam, what do you think?
Ooh, can I go in between? Can I go like a maybe if you have nothing else to read?
Yeah.
It's not the strongest issue of Amazing during the Black Costume storyline, that's for sure. But I think it's serviceable. It's a great, it's a good one and done. I'll put it that way.
Right.
Not a must read, but if you have the time and it stumbles across your periphery, you may as well.
Sure. I guess I can only say this may not be the greatest Spider-Man story, but at least it is a Spider-Man story, which is good by any other measurement, right? That's what I think anyway, because I love Spidey. But anyway, okay, so let's move forward. Now we're going to jump to... Oh, here we go, Josh. This one's for you. Joshua Mervell, tell us what our next comic is.
I am going to blast through this synopsis. I'm going as fast as I possibly can, because... This issue, we're going to be talking about Marvel Team Up with Spider-Man and Star Fox, issue number 143. And it's just like needlessly complicated. So I tried my best to actually write out what happens, because it's just like so much is thrown out at you. And just like with the rest of the Marvel Team Ups, like it's just everything is way over explained, and there is too much dialogue happening where like I lose things from word bubble to word bubble just because like so much is just thrown out there and it's mostly just gibberish.
Right.
So we pick back up with Spider-Man as he tries to figure out why his friend Monica Rambeau, aka Captain Marvel, is stuck in her energy form. They realize that her physical form is probably trapped in another dimension after foiling the plans of Dr. Paulson and Dr. Lorber to transport half of Earth's population to another world in the previous issue. So just as all hope seems lost, Monica's Avenger buddy Star Fox joins them with Dr. Lorber in custody. Now, with the information that he provides, they're able to figure out that they've got to jump to another dimension to stop the Pride Machine and return safely back to restore Captain Marvel's body, because they're thinking that like her power has to do with like dimension jumping, and like her energy form and her human body like swap dimensions every time she like uses her powers. Right. So they're thinking that the machine, this Pride Machine that they used last issue, is stopping her from being able to change back and forth. Mm-hmm. So Star Fox and Spider-Man jump to another dimension, and they learn that the Pride Machine is now being used as a force field by an all-woman tribe called the Elysian. They agree to shut off the machine, if they can defeat a rival tribe that they're protecting themselves from using the force field. So the next day, they decide to go confront and stop these bad guys. When Star Fox, of course, just falls ill, because why not? More stuff needs to happen in the issue. And Spider-Man is forced to fight their leader, the Will Killer, alone. They fight a little bit. Spider-Man flips him off a cliff, and the Elysian tribe is able to live in peace, and there's no war in this other dimension. So they shut off the machine. Spidey and Star Fox return back to Earth. Only after Star Fox decides to fall in love with one of the women. They return back to Earth, and Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, has been restored.
Yeah.
Woof! It's a lot. It's just so it's so much happens, and it's just nonsense. Nothing matters in this issue. It's just muddled garbage.
Well, I'll just say quickly, my first impression is not only did I hate it, but I hated it more so because why did Captain Marvel have to be saved by Spider-Man and Star Fox? That really irritated me,
You're right. Why couldn't she go along too?
Right. If she was, let's be clear, if she was a male hero, this would not have happened this way. She would have been there.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, Adam, so what's your impression of this issue?
Well, I'm very disappointed because this isn't my Star Fox. My Star Fox is on Nintendo 64. I'm being told to do barrel rolls. I'm sorry, I had to do the obvious line. Okay, I hate Star Fox. It is...
Oh, everyone does. Yep.
Oh my God. And this whole thing where all the women are attracted to him because he has that psychic ability to manipulate people's emotions, I guess it is. It's just so dumb. Nothing of consequence happens at all in this issue. It's almost as if someone said, we want to do an issue where Spider-Man travels to another dimension, but we also want it to be like Mad Max.
Right.
Which sounds horrible, and trust me, was horrible. There's this weird scene where this 11-year-old girl, I want to say, hits on Spider-Man out of nowhere. And then what is his name? Willpower, Will Killer, whatever his name is.
Will Killer, yeah.
Oh my God, this guy, talk about forgettable adversaries. He's just a guy with a ponytail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't really understand why Spidey had so much trouble with this dude. I don't remember there being anything special about him, right? He just was a big dude.
He's just a big buff guy. He's like the ultimate warrior, essentially.
Here's the thing. It's funny because this was written by David Michelinie, who, has a very good run on Iron Man and future run on Spider-Man. But this feels like an old issue of Marvel Team Up, right? By J.M. DeMatteis, where they would just throw crap at a wall and see what stuck. Why does Spider-Man need to be in this story? Why is it basically Mad Max? It is Mad Max. It's just them doing Mad Max. As soon as they ended up in another dimension, I just rolled my eyes. Why does this need to happen? And at first I thought it was a little bit interesting with them trying to figure out what happened to Captain Marvel's powers. It's they kind of do a little bit of not detective work, but kind of figuring out, so maybe this device is stuck between dimensions. And I thought that's a cool idea. But let's be clear, scientifically, another dimension, they could have used a lot more imagination than just saying, they're just on another planet that looks exactly like Earth, except everyone's dressed like they're in a Duran Duran video, So, I don't know. Yeah, I did not like this at all. I didn't like Star Fox. I didn't like anything.
Yeah, there's so much that they could have done. Even an alternate dimension New York would have been so much more fun.
Right,
and they could have been fighting bizarro versions of themselves.
Right.
Anything.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, use your imagination. Okay, it's a different dimension. So when you say dimension, it literally means, length, width, breadth. Was it breadth? Whatever, depth. And then you think, okay, then time. Okay, so if you're in the fifth dimension, let's have use your imagination and do something cool with a Tesseract or an MC Escher type thing where it's extra dimensions. Or like you said, if it's a parallel Earth, then let's do post-apocalyptic New York or something. But this is just an excuse. This is almost like a bad episode of Star Trek where they're like, well, we don't have the budget for anything else, so let's just, how about they find a planet where it's ancient Rome? There you go. It's Earth, but it's ancient Rome. Like, those stories are fun, but at the end of the day, those are the bad episodes of Star Trek, and that's what I feel like this is.
Yeah, this actually reminded me of anything of the '60s Spider-Man cartoon when they stopped basing episodes off of actual issues and they would just have Peter Parker, Spider-Man fighting aliens or interdimensional beings. I'm sure you get my reference, what I'm talking about. It would just be 20 minutes of stock footage of Spider-Man walking, having aliens chase after him. These episodes that felt like any other character would be better suited for this type of story than Spider-Man. And they're boring. That's the greatest sin about it. This issue was boring. I will tell you, one time I had oral surgery to remove my wisdom teeth, and that was a more pleasant experience than reading this issue.
Yeah, I might have to agree with that. This was frustrating, not just because it was a bad story, but because I don't know, it's just a waste of space. Like why did they need to tell this story? They didn't.
Oh, it's a bad story. It's okay. Yep. It's bad.
I do want to briefly mention though, the art was actually decent. I mean, we've talked about Greg LaRocque before, and he's not a spectacular artist, but I think Mike Esposito's inks really helped this month. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't mind the art at all this month. Josh, what did you think?
No, I think that the art was fine, but it's hard to enjoy the art when there's dialogue covering it all up.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much describing what is happening and not showing us. And like I know we're talking specifically about the art, but it's just so hard to separate the two when when one is covering the other. And the dialogue and like describing what we're looking at kind of defeats the purpose of the art.
Right.
It's just like I don't know. I think Marvel Team Up has always struggled with this like over describing or like describing what we're already looking at.
Right.
So it was tough for me to even enjoy the art when I was just trying to like power through the story.
Okay, Adam, did you like the art?
I'm going to agree with Mike. I thought the art was actually pretty good. In fact, I would say more than serviceable. I actually liked this art in this issue. I agree that the inking really helps. Here's the problem, though. You have really great sequentially placed panels, really good artwork. It's dynamic, great character models and designs, great facial expressions. The characters are distinct. You can tell them apart. And going back to Josh's point, it's ruined by excessive dialogue bubbles. It's ruined by an incomprehensible story. This is one of those situations where you can talk about, let's say, a film that has beautiful cinematography, but it just has someone going, for half an hour. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is. You're not going to want to watch the bloody thing.
Yep. I got to point out, this opening splash page is actually excellent. It looks like Bill Sienkiewicz to me, right? Like this opening shot of Captain Marvel. I think it was so good that I thought it wasn't Greg LaRocque and Mike Esposito. I thought it was Bill Sienkiewicz, but sure enough, it is them. So it obviously shows that they're both capable of great work, but yeah, it's wasted on the story. And I have to say that in the last few years, since I've discovered Comixology and other digital platforms for comics, I have read so many goddamn comics. Like sometimes I'll be like, I'm going to read every Captain Marvel, and I'll just read like 30 issues in a row. But I'll tell you, after the first few, sometimes they get really rough and I start to just skim. But for the most part, the art is always good. And so I have actually guilt-free just been like, you know what? I'm not going to read this. I'm just going to look at the art. And this is an issue where I could just, it's almost like watching a movie with the sound off. You just ignore the text and you just look at the art. You're like, yeah, this is cool. You kind of get what's going on, and that's about it. So that's really all it's worth is the art, this issue.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
Yeah, and I can see what you're saying. Even looking at an example such as page 22, digital page 22, there's this great layout for the panels, as Will Killer is falling down the cliff, there's
Right.
this great declining of all these different panels going down. I think
Yep.
stylistically, I think in terms of conveying that sequential movement of the panels, it works so well and it's creative. I hate the fact that it's paired with this story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what? It's as
Woo.
if you had a plate of broken glass and it was slathered in hot fudge. Oh, I would love some hot fudge, but I have to get through that broken glass to enjoy it.
Right.
Yep. Yep. I think it's safe to say, do I recommend this comic? Not really. Do I ever want to read it again? No. So I guess no. I can't recommend it. Josh, do you recommend it?
How about I just say this? This issue, this is the reason why there are only 7 more issues of Marvel Team Up.
That's true. That's true. Yep.
This is why.
Uh-huh. I hope it gets better. But anyway, Adam, do you recommend this issue?
For people who hate themselves, yes. Otherwise, no.
All right. There you go. You self-loathing people out there. This is for you. So yeah, unfortunately, another dud from Marvel Team Up. Like Josh said, we can definitely see why it was canceled. Although, I don't know why Star Fox didn't fire up the sales enough to keep it going. But who knows, right? What do we know? Okay, so now we're going to jump to Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man 92. Adam, would you like to do the honors of summarizing this issue quickly?
Well, I'll do my best. Essentially, it opens up with a mysterious figure engaged with Kingpin, who is assigning him to tackle Spider-Man and also see about this experiment that's been conducted on Alicia Hardy, aka the Black Cat.
Right.
So, Felicia Hardy is also Peter Parker's beau at this point. There's a great opening shot where they're kissing upside down underneath a water tower, and you get some good character moments between the two of them. She goes off, and then we have a bit of Flash Thompson and his girlfriend that really goes nowhere. Then some other Peter Parker shenanigans where things go even worse for Peter than expected, more than normal. His bad luck just seems to be bounding between having an argument with Robbie, having a check bounce, and various other things that go on. Well, then while he's trying to catch some sleep, Black Cat comes up to his window, says she's being attacked, where they are met with the most ridiculous villain I've ever met in a Spider-Man comic book, which is saying something. The Answer. The Answer is like, how do I describe this? Imagine Liberace and and Cobra Kai somehow formed and decided to make a purple-robed supervillain whose power is he flaps his arms and he punches very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say there's a little bit more to him than that, but it's bad. It's bad. There's a fight between Spider-Man and the Answer, which I could have done without seeing. And after the Answer pummels Spider-Man, Black Cat intervenes. It looks like he's defeated, but he gets out of Spidey's web. Spidey and Alicia Hardy have a nice little kissing moment under the web, and then we go back to Kingpin talking to the Answer, where it's revealed the Black Cat has bad luck powers, which are apparently affecting Spider-Man, which immediately made me facepalm myself, and that thus ended the issue.
Yep. I just gonna say quickly, I hate the idea of bad luck powers, specifically because I don't believe luck exists. So unless you can define scientifically what that means, like, does it make people clumsy? Well, no, because I think we've seen her power affect, like, inanimate objects, right? So it doesn't make people clumsy. So how do you define what luck is? That's why I hate that power, number one.
Right.
Whenever I see a villain like the Answer, I go, okay, what is your, we talked about Jack-o'-lantern earlier. It's like, okay, what's your theme? Like, okay, because first of all, there's a character called the Question, right? Which is, okay, we've got a guy in a trench coat, right? Which is, he's the precursor for Rorschach. a guy in a trench coat with a blank face with a question mark on his face. So he's a vigilante. He's kind of got this, sort of Randian philosophy. Okay, cool. Makes sense. So here's the answer. Okay, so my theme is I have big baggy, sleeves and a yellow skirt on. Nothing wrong with that. But in a yellow, collar. Like, what is the theme here? Like, you look at this and you go, what are you...
He's got, like, big metal boots, too.
Yeah, like, what are you going for? Actually, you know what's funny? Now that I think about it, the only other character I can think of in superhero history who has sleeves like this is Firestorm, and sure enough, his costume was also designed by Al Milgrom. Isn't that funny? Yeah. Isn't that funny? Oh. So, but I gotta say, I do love Firestorm's costume, so I can't diss Al Milgrom's sleeve choices. But anyway.
Right, but I guess it kind of makes sense with like fire powers, and it's like the heat will make it. Sure, it's like a hot air balloon type. What's going on with him? He can just fly, I guess, because he's got the big sleeves.
He also has a gigantic exclamation mark on his chest.
Right.
Which is on top of everything. Yes, his costume is an exclamation mark because you go, what the hell, as soon as you see this guy.
Yeah, right.
Also, a big-ass gold collar surrounding his neck. There is like a discount supervillain clothes store that he just ransacked one night. That's all I can think of.
Right.
And the thing is like this costume is not in and of itself bad. Like, it looks like it's suited to like an alien race or something science fiction-y. But I don't know. I mean, again, maybe we're thinking too hard about how a supervillain should dress, but at least with Jack-o'-lantern or Green Goblin or Dr. Octopus, there's a theme and an idea behind what they're doing. But when you're just called the answer and this is what you come up with, I just don't see a connection there. I don't see a theme, Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the art quickly. Adam, what do you think about this art here by Al Milgrom?
I have mixed feelings. There's some places where I actually really enjoy it. I love the character design in some places. There are a few awkward poses here and there, but for the most part, it's serviceable. Then the fight sequence goes on, and maybe it's just because of my hatred of this particular villain, but it just doesn't seem dynamic. There's something very stiff about this fight scene, especially compared to the Jack-o'-lantern fight over in Amazing. It's kind of hard to describe exactly what it is, but there's just something that's lacking any sense of urgency going on. It's serviceable. I appreciate that there's more background elements than I'm accustomed to from comics of this era, but it wasn't wowing. I'll put it that way.
Right. Josh, I mean, we've talked about Al Milgrom.
Yeah.
So we've been blue in the face. What do you think of this art?
I feel like particularly it gets maybe the worst it's been in some spots. Like with the fight scenes, I mean, Spider-Man just like loses all form and like his proportions are so extremely off. I mean, even the shape of his head, like his head is now just a balloon that is attached to a torso. Like if you go to original page 12, that first panel of Spider-Man, what is that? Like it looks like he forgot to draw Spider-Man's head and went, "Oh shit, just throw a dot on there." Real quick. Like it's
his
just
neck is coming from his shoulder. Yeah.
It's so bad. I mean, even earlier on when the form is like at least a little bit more there's no shadows. Like there's no highlights, there's nothing. Like in the previous issues with the black costume, they use blue to highlight and show like a shine on his body, and for the most part he's just like a giant black blob in half of the panels where he has the black costume on.
Another great example of that I think is on digital page 15, which is original page 14. The very top panel, we have Answer just doing some sort of Raiden-style Superman punch, and Spider-Man apparently has lost his bones. They have all turned to jelly.
Yeah.
Right. By the way, what the hell are these characters for these kids? Is this supposed to be a reference to something? On page 14?
I think they're just playing cowboys and Indians, I assume.
It just seems like a very specific...
Isn't it Davy
it's almost
Crockett?
Right.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Maybe.
that's the impression, maybe, but like these kids dressed as Davy Crockett, like I wonder if it's a specific TV show or a movie or I don't know. It just seems lost on me. I don't know what they're getting at there, but who knows? Maybe it's nothing. I don't know. I gotta say, again, we've talked about this before. Jim Mooney is one of the best Spider-Man inkers, and I really think he does save the art. I don't think the art's terrible. I think this opening sequence and the ending sequence are definitely Al Milgrom trying to do a Frank Miller, with the shadows and the windows, like the film noir window shadows on the faces. I don't hate it. I definitely think it's better than Al Milgrom's Hulk run, which I found unreadable. So, I appreciate him doing the classic 9-panel grid 50s style. That's cool. You're going through the pages and nothing spectacular is happening, but I do appreciate, again, doing the routine of J. Jonah Jameson, Robbie Robertson. The check bouncing. I love that stuff. So I feel like this issue, it's not a great issue of Spider-Man, but again, at least it's a Spider-Man comic. Whereas Marvel Team Up, that wasn't really a Spider-Man comic. That was a Mad Max. And this is what I want from Spider-Man. I want Spider-Man to have a check bouncing, a little bit of melodrama with his supporting cast, a little bit of fight. Again, not spectacular, not a masterpiece, but kind of a quaint issue of 80s Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. So I mildly recommend it. I don't love it, but I recommend it. Adam, do you recommend this issue?
I don't know. I haven't. Okay, I'm gonna say not to go on a tangent, but I really hate the bad luck powers as well. And It's all about suspension of disbelief. Yes, I can believe Peter is wearing an alien life form on his body. I can believe that being bitten by a radioactive spider will give you powers. There is nothing to indicate why someone would go underneath a scientific experiment that would give them bad luck. It's not magic.
Right.
It's nothing like that. It's literally something that's supposed to be akin to like what the Scorpion went through. It's a scientific experiment that gave her these powers. That makes no sense.
Right.
So I hate that element. The art's not that great. This is the most laughable villain I've ever encountered. What was the other guy? Stilter?
Oh, Stiltman. That's Mike Dell's favorite supervillain. Yeah.
You know what? I would rather see him fight Stiltman any day of the week. I will say this. This is not nearly as bad as Marvel Team Up because I didn't want to quite gouge out my eyes after, but this was not good. This was like when you're a kid and you're expecting to find a toy inside your box of cereal and instead a dead cockroach comes out. That's how I'm going to put it.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. Josh, anything to add to that?
I mean, what else is there to say? I'll give you. I think that the last page is the best thing about this comic. The art is really well done, and I always love me some Kingpin. But it's just another issue of absolutely nothing happening. Since before Secret Wars, Black Cat has had these powers, and every single time. Every single month, we have Black Cat saying, I have to talk to Peter. I need to tell him that I got powers. And still, nothing happens every issue. It's the same thing with Spectacular. They show a problem. The characters say, I really need to tell the other person this. And then for issue upon issue upon issue upon issue, it's the same thing. Man, I really should tell the other person that this is going on. And I'm just like so done with it. Oh my god. I would almost prefer Marvel Team Up because at least new things are happening. They're bad, but it's not the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, Al Milgrom.
If this was the first time hearing about this like conflict between the two, I don't think I would hate it as much as I do. But because it's the same thing every week, it's just like I'm over it.
Well, Josh, I hate to spoil things, but being familiar with this run, I got some bad news for you about the next issue.
It's the same thing?
It's basically the same thing.
Basically
with the same characters, including the return of our favorite answer. So But anyway,
Oh,
I'll let you
good.
talk about that on the next podcast.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm assuming you guys both do not recommend this issue then.
No.
Right. Okay. So I don't know. This was a rough one. I appreciate you joining us, Adam, because like I said, we're kind of going through a rough patch here. I was excited about the alien costume, but whew, it hasn't been too pleasant so far, but hopefully it's going to pick up. We'll see, right?
You know, I'm going to give you I want to give you my 2 cents on this just very quickly. Rereading some of the stuff for the Alien Costume Saga, I really, really was just struck by how uninspired the writers were continuously reading issues, just not the ones for this episode, but some other ones surrounding it. It was just the writers going, isn't this costume cool? Look at how great it is. Really trying to convince readers of how good it is. Meanwhile, that was not the case. They were failing to give any sort of urgency to his villains or the storylines going on at the time. And all I can say is, I think it comes to a head, again, plugging your next episode in the next issue of Amazing, where it is the most memorable issue of the Alien Costume Saga for me, where Spider-Man fights monkeys. But I will leave that for you for next week.
Woo! I can't wait. Okay, I guess, that wraps up another issue or episode of Here Comes the Spider-Cast. We definitely want to thank Adam Pelche for joining us again, especially considering the low quality of the issues this week. So thank you, Adam.
Oh, you owe me.
Yeah, we promise the next time you come on, we'll have a better batch of comics for you. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the Clone Saga, isn't it? I can feel it right now.
No. We'll have you on. We'll have you on before the Clone Saga. Believe me. But yeah, thanks again. And
okay, but
yeah,
you're welcome.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say, joking aside, thank you so much, guys.
For sure, anytime. And Josh, you can take it from here.
Yeah, we also want to thank you guys for listening to the podcast. It really helps when you leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, or you can drop us a line on Twitter at HCTSpidercast. You can pretty much find the podcast wherever you can find podcasts. So that's like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us. So please leave a comment or a review. It really helps us, and we want to keep that conversation going.
That's right. And until next Monday, this has been Here Comes the Spider-Cast. All right.
See you then.